Kia ora tatau. Welcome back once again to Tech Week TV. We are on the afternoon of day 4 of our program. And for this session, we are going to focus on how Aotearoa can overcome the tech skills barrier. My name, I think that's one of the barriers. So those are potentially what I see as 3 different ways that we can help address, but within each of those areas, there are gaps. Right? What have been your experience, Mark, in what you've done at Air New Zealand?
Sure. So at Air New Zealand, I'm responsible for software engineering, QA engineering, and probably best call it support engineering. I've got about 330 people all up. That's mostly a mix of contractors and employees, so all sourced from the local market. Most of them are Auckland-based. Kind of what we've found, and certainly over COVID, probably about 10% of that's actually around New Zealand now, so people who are permanently remote. And in many ways, it's what does it matter if somebody's on the other end of a Zoom call or a Teams call if they're living over in the North Shore as opposed to living in Blenheim or Nelson or Napier or wherever that happens to be. So, but predominantly they are Auckland-based. I'm looking at growing by around 100 roles next year.
Wow.
We've got a desire to deliver a whole bunch of digital work, and lack of digital capacity in terms of people is one of the key constraints that we have, which is stopping us delivering what we need to do. So growing up from where I currently am with about 330 up to about 430 or so is something that I need to do to be able to deliver to the needs of the business. And so it's like, okay, how on earth do I do that? So it's something that's certainly top of mind for me. So I do feel that I'm in constant competition with my fellow New Zealand organisations for talent. So there's a kind of the pool of people in New Zealand is what it is. So I need to offer a better proposition to potential employees or contractors than my competitors, I guess, for that same talent. So, I mean, one of the first things is that the easiest way to recruit is by keeping the people you have. That there's nothing harder to try and increase the size of your headcount if in actual fact people are leaving as fast as they're arriving. You're on that treadmill and you're running as fast as you can, you're going absolutely nowhere. So I think making sure that you're retaining people, that it's an attractive place to work, people enjoy working for you. It's not necessarily all about money. It's the entire value proposition for those people. Do they get the level of autonomy and mastery and purpose that Daniel Pink talks about? Are they getting that sense of career progression? Is the company willing to invest in developing those people? So that keeps people inside the company.
There's also prestige in your brand, right?
There is, and it's something that it's easy to forget, but it's obviously an incredibly strong brand in the New Zealand market, and people look up to us as much as I think we've got so much work to do for the company from a digital perspective. People look and go, wow, it's like actually you guys are so innovative, and I forget just how much that's true. So I think keeping the people that you have is really important. There seems to be people inside the company who don't have a digital background but have a desire to become digital, and so part of
that's
I'm
cross-transitioning, right?
That's cross-transitioning, and also not actually just from inside the company as well, but there's a bit of prejudice, I think, that as a software engineer myself, in background of actually people are kind of born software engineers or they're not, right? And actually it's like, maybe I need to think of it more as a spectrum of, slowly working through. It's like, actually, I can master complex Excel calculations through to I can do some basic scripting through to maybe some of those low-code type environments through to actually I'm an enterprise Java engineer or whatever that is. So if you're thinking in terms of more of a spectrum, maybe that helps in being able to transition people from I know nothing, I'm not a digital person, through the steps, and we can train people up to actually become more of a software engineer and develop our internal talent that way, from starting with not much to being able to do more. So I definitely think that's there. I've got a case of a hairdresser that applied. She put herself through some digital training and said, look, I'd love to work for you guys. You know, it's like, well, that's just not something I'd have thought would even be possible, but here she is. So
amazing.
You know, yeah, it's getting beyond that prejudice about what you think is the case to what might actually be possible. I think is definitely important.
Yes.
Graduates, I think, are incredibly important. I kind of view them a little bit like stem cells, and they haven't specialised yet. They can do everything, and I think that we've certainly got, you talk about seniors, for example, and constantly wanting to access senior people rather than growing your own. Often they're kind of fit within the mould, fit within the box, and don't venture beyond it. And I think having that T-shaped capability that graduates come with, introducing fresh thinking, introducing that constantly learning. That's something that graduates have been doing since they've been born, and we lose that as we mature through becoming a senior, whatever it is. I'm in my place of comfort. So I really think that graduates, when they come, they can really bring that, and they can change an organisation, become a learning organisation with a growth mindset. They have to deal with all of the pivots that's going to be thrown at us. So I'm really looking forward to having a constant intake every year, and rather than being senior heavy, because we're an attractive brand, we can get people in the door, and having more of a younger, less experienced, but that talent's there, and that mindset is there. That's really important.
It's a bit of a balanced portfolio, right?
I think it's getting that balance right, and understand that there will be a level of attrition. People will move through the experience level. We need to nurture our graduates. Speed of learning is key for a graduate, probably more than how much you get paid. It's actually how quickly am I learning to increase my level of value. They have time on their hands, and so they need to maximise that. I think when we're looking for graduates, it's not just, we could go to the traditional university courses, but it's actually, if you want a diversity of people, you need to be looking at a diverse group of places for those people as well. So whether it's an organisation like Take Two, for example, I'm not sure that we've got our own requirements around people's backgrounds, I guess. But looking at some of those and saying, actually, can we go there to help us get some of that diversity? So we probably want to take about 10 or 20 graduates per year. But I think that's kind of beyond that, when you're fighting beyond New Zealand market, how can you access some of the overseas talent? And I think it's difficult. We've tried a number of times. We've had one successful engagement, which has run for 15 years. It's been very stable, long term. We've had those people come and stay here for extended periods of time. We get to know them. That's worked very well. But I think that as we want to do more of that, then I think that.
So it may not be something that you would do transactionally, right?
Well, I think it's harder to do transactionally. You've got to deal with a time zone issue. You've got to deal with that cultural fiction that you like of my culture is slightly different to yours. That just introduces a level of barrier. Time zone, I think, can be very unhelpful as well. But those processes that we have around how quickly does it take to upskill somebody, I think that it's a lot easier if I've got someone sitting next to me. It's not a big barrier, because I can just talk to them and I can take them through it. But if I don't have good documentation, if I don't have good provisioning processes around access, it just makes it all so much harder. And so I think that there's a level of maturity as an organisation that we would actually benefit from anyway, which is required to actually make it much more effective to be able to access offshore talent.
Absolutely. So on that point, Ilan, have you got anything else to add in terms of offshore talent?
Yeah, so we did a study in New Zealand about outsourcing, and what we learned is that 70% of New Zealand enterprises do not outsource, and the 30% that outsource, they will outsource to Australia and the US. So obviously they're thinking along the line of the Western world, which is outsourcing to Asia and to other locations like, say, Eastern Europe, doesn't reside with New Zealand companies. And it's not necessarily the size that it's in the way. I think it's the mindset. So when we ask those that outsource, why do you do that? And it was mainly about cost saving, which makes the point that you were making. We need to move towards partnership. We need to see that it's a long-term investment and it's not something that you expect return immediately. You need to invest in that in order to understand that over time there will be benefits in doing that. And yeah, our argument around, time zone, I think doesn't hold water, to be honest, because if a US company outsources to India, then we're in a far better position when it comes to time zone. So I don't think that I will hold to that excuse. I would say that it's a mindset still within New Zealand companies that they shy away from outsourcing. There is a lot to learn about outsourcing, how it can be done properly. But eventually, it's a decision that makes sense in the business context here, and how you wish to present yourself to your customers. So I think that it is valid. There is an opportunity there, and it doesn't necessarily have to be outsourcing. It's about thinking about the global talent out there. How do you access it? And then the mechanisms are many. It's not just contractual through outsourcing. It's through different platforms that New Zealand companies have to start exploring, understanding, and engaging, and eventually benefit from talent that exists out there in a problem that is very likely not to be solved in the coming years.
Absolutely. So my take from hearing from you both is that ultimately there's a whole lot of things we can do here in New Zealand, but also there is a global talent pool, right? That Kiwi companies can learn more about how do we access that, how do we operate in a global kind of ecosystem when it comes to tech talent, especially when tech talent is so mobile as well, right? So we're coming up to time. But otherwise we could chat about this for a lot longer. But thank you very much for coming onto the program and contributing your insights. It's really great to see that there's successes, in terms of upskilling and upscaling Kiwi tech talent. But also great to hear that there are options that are much more widely available to us as well. Once again, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Kia ora.
Thank you.
Yeah.